Jason Arday is proof that the Black tax can be fatal. There are many, many sad takeaways from the recent passing of Jason Arday, and at the core of it is that Black tax can actually kill you if you subscribe too much to the rules that it sets around how you as a Black person shows up in predominantly white society. The Black tax becomes dangerous when we are taught that extraordinary effort will keep us safe within systems that are designed to always move the goalposts, and when the standards of acceptance are entirely outside of our control. For those unfamiliar, the Black tax is a standard taught to many Black children within white societies. It is this belief that you have to work twice as hard to receive the same level of recognition as your white counterparts. The Black tax is especially prevalent within Black immigrant families. In my house, the Black tax did double platinum. That's something that Jason Arday must have felt very deeply growing up within his Ghanaian home. Jason Arday is an interesting case. He was born with severe autism, which meant that he was largely nonverbal until he was 11 years old, and he didn't learn how to read or write until he was 18. By 22, he had already decided that he was going to pursue a doctorate. By the time he was 27, he was already writing on his wall, "One day I will work at Oxford or Cambridge." He made that come true, earning him the position of the youngest Black professor ever at Cambridge. The standard of excellence that Jason placed on himself, given his neurodivergent beginning, is such a great example of how the Black tax is prevalent throughout the Black community, regardless of your starting point. His ambitions perfectly exemplify the feeling that many Black children have, especially those of immigrant families, that no matter your aptitude, your ability, excellence is still required. Black immigrant children are taught early on the sacrifice that our parents made to bring us to a country where opportunities were better. There is no discussions within our homes around equitable treatment. Instead, we are taught that our efforts will only be recognized if we work harder than everyone else around us, and there is no exception to that rule. If our parents had left their families, their culture, their comfortability, the fact that their racial identity was majoritized in their home countries, that is a sacrifice that we now owe, because they left that system of comfort to come to a system of extreme discomfort to not only benefit their children, but the generations that come after them. So a lot of Black immigrant kids, myself included, grew up with this heavy burden that there was a debt to be paid for the sacrifices that our parents made. Jason was exemplary in so many different areas of his life, even as an athlete. In 2010, he ran 30 marathons in 35 days. He also carried the torch in the 2012 London Olympics. And all of these claims of excellence, both physical and mental, were ultimately what put a target on his back and attracted negative attention from colleagues as well as the UK media. He did everything he was told he was supposed to do. He worked doubly as hard. He was exemplary. And while the Black tax is rooted in this belief that if you are exceptional, then you will be safe, Jason's life perfectly exemplifies that it can actually create the opposite. The system that the Black tax is rooted in, many would argue that system is white supremacy, is inherently arbitrary and discretionary, and therefore it is rooted in hypocrisy. The idea of paying the Black tax is rooted in this belief that we can outrun racism, that if we play the game better than even the originators of the game, that we can win the game. And in reality, Jason Arday and many other examples within society are proof that that is not true, that the Black tax is often a tool of white supremacy to get Black people to work themselves to the bone to keep Black people distracted and ultimately always moving the goalposts further and further away to the point that we are unable to slow down and focus on the deep inequity that we are living within. The Black tax keeps us preoccupied so that we ultimately don't have enough energy, time, or bandwidth to actually fight for our honest collective liberation. Many of us are taught the Black tax as a survival tool, but there's a lie hidden deep within that formula. It assumes that success is primarily rooted in your effort. The lie at the root of that argument is that racism actually allows space for there to be a meritocracy, that the people and institutions that hold the power will be motivated primarily by your effort and not by the systems that protect them. A core discrepancy within the Black tax is that not only does your effort have to be exemplary or outside the systems of the norm, but so does the systems of accountability. Embedded within this idea of the Black tax is not only that you have to work doubly as hard, but that if you don't, or if you're found lacking within the system, the punishment is extraordinary as well. If any of the accusations made against Jason Arday were rooted in truth, like many, many white scholars similarly at Cambridge, the newspapers would have had no interest in that person. The fact that it was picked up by national newspapers that wrote article after article inciting racist backlash, that punishment was disproportionately different for Jason than it would have been for his white colleagues. The difference is who gets quietly corrected, who gets investigated, who gets publicly humiliated, whose mistakes become evidence that they were completely undeserving in the first place, whose mistakes are held against them in a way that is an indictment on their character for the rest of their lives. He had actually run 30 marathons in 35 days. There was no evidence of plagiarism. Even in the face of those truths, the UK media stoked racial fire around him in order to assert that Black people should never be the standard within academic settings. And for many Black people who pay the Black tax, we know that our credentials have to be airtight. I am completely Ivy League educated, undergrad, master's, and PhD. And while there were schools that I would have preferred to go to, I knew, and my parents said without really saying, that because I had been accepted by Ivy League institutions, that is where I needed to go because it was going to give me the most credibility. What is so heartbreaking around the Jason case is that the people who challenged his credibility did not have the credentials to be taken as seriously as they were. The only credentials that they had were that they were white. So the standard of proof of our excellence is only valued when measured against the highest standard. But if someone wants to discredit me or other Black people, as evidenced by the case of Jason, it doesn't matter the credentials of our accuser. The fact that Nathan Koffness, a scholar whose work is rooted in the ideological belief that Black people are inferior in intellect to other human beings, was allowed to scrutinize and criticize Jason's credentials speaks to the inherent imbalance rooted in this belief that the Black tax can save us. And even when paying the Black tax doesn't result in your untimely death, the cost of it physically is so extreme. The need for constant code switching, perfectionism, starting earlier, staying later, doing work that wasn't allocated to you, taking on unpaid roles, navigating microaggressions and sabotage. All of that is rooted in working twice as hard. And all those things have extreme wear on your body, your mind, your spirits. All of this results in racial battle fatigue, which is the cumulative physiological and psychological damage caused by constantly having to navigate racism. When we look at the performance of Black people, within professional spaces, whether they be corporate or academic. We are seeing the vestiges of what it means to play the back tax. It shows up in insomnia. It shows up in chronic sickness. It shows up in irritability and mood swings. It shows up in isolation, extreme introvertedness. The amount of times I have coached leaders in academic spaces and in corporate spaces that argue that their minoritized, specifically Black employees, aren't showing up enthusiastically, aren't giving the positive feedback that's expected of them, the gratitude that's expected of them to hold the positions they have, without the appreciation of this heavy mental strain of being the first and only. Because the Black tax is spoken about so candidly within Black circles, but not as candidly outside of them, a lot of non-Black people are unaware of the weight of that tax, the wear of that tax, the toll that it takes on your body, on your psyche, on your sociability. And so it's so easy to pathologize certain high-achieving Black people as socially awkward, as non-engaging, non-enthusiastic, threatening, mean, mad, without appreciating that tax is slowly killing us every day with the efforts that we are making to be accepted while also having to be exceptional. But it also makes me deeply, deeply sad that Black people as a whole will work so hard to fight for people who look like them, but often when it comes to fighting for yourself, feel isolated, feel alone. When you are in departments that are predominantly white, you feel desperately alone. You forget about your networks. I think it's so interesting the amount of people who wrote beautiful op-eds and essays about Jason after he passed, but also remained critically quiet when the accusations first came out. That contributed to his feeling that he was in this alone, that while he had fought for himself and so many people, that he might have picked up a battle that would have been too heavy for him to hold. And he didn't realize the outswell of support that he actually had. And so if I'm taking this lesson from Jason, what I'm spending time thinking about now is, where am I still forcing myself to pay the Black tax? When I can opt out of those systems and do something where my agency and effort does not have to be disproportionate to be recognized. Where am I thinking that I'm alone in some of the battles that I am facing without appreciating the love and support that is around me, without trusting my ability to pivot, to move forward, to fight back for myself? Oftentimes, and this is a design of the tax, Black people are so exhausted from being extraordinary, they do not believe or feel like they have the will to fight. Black people disproportionately are entrepreneurs because so many of us are so tired of paying this tax, of being in systems that have such a heavy toll to pay. And also as parents, where are we passing down a legacy of fear and the false idea that we can only be safe when we are doing too much, even at the expense of ourselves? I think at the root of it, and it is really, really hard for me to acknowledge, is this idea that excellence doesn't offer safety. We are seeing time and time again of people playing by the rules that their parents taught them and still losing. And Jason is the perfect example of that. So I think what it means is now we've got to rewrite the game for ourselves, make new rules for ourselves outside of the systems that are so committed to destroying us. What is the price I want to pay for the life that I want? And what is the price I'm unwilling to pay? What ambitions do I need to cast aside because the cost to gain them is more than I am willing to give? Then I probably won't even enjoy them if I achieve them because they came at such a great cost. What are the end games? What are the benchmarks? What are the goals that I can set for myself that still honor my need for rest, my need for care, my need to sometimes be lazy, my need to not always be perfect, my need to just be and still be enough?